this presentation today is about Tikkun Olam and how it relates to Jewish social justice. My name is Annie Resnick, and I am a Serve the Moment Service Corps member. Before we start, here's some questions that I invite you to think about as we go along with this presentation. We will have time at the end to reflect on how you have related to your own relationship with service and social justice through this sharing. So the questions are, how is my service or engagement in social justice impacted by my identity or identities, my relationship and responsibility to the communities I identify with, my relationship to the communities I serve and serve with, and my relationship to the greater society? What motivates me to keep showing up to serve? Who or what was the entry point to service or social justice? And I have to give it to Hannah Chevron, who is on this call right now, as we did a presentation about Tikkun Olam, and this was something that Hannah brought me to think about, and so I was able to use that for this presentation, which is awesome. All right, so today, my goal is to share with you how Jewish wisdom and core values, specifically the core value of Tikkun Olam and our responsibility to repair the world, can inform our understanding of and how we go about doing service. And I'll start with a bit about myself and my experience growing up in a Jewish community dedicated to service that centered on Tikkun Olam, then transition to origins and history of Tikkun Olam in the Jewish world. So I grew up in a reform shul in Southern California. The things that really brought me into the shul at a very young age, because I'm actually the only person in my immediate family now who goes to services and participates in Jewish life actively. And what really brought me in was the music in my shul, the spirituality, and the social justice. And I call it a reform shul, but I think there's a lot of Kabbalistic and Reconstructionalist values that informed how my shul ran, and I'll get to that later, what that means. So some of the pillars of my teachings were Tikkun Olam, world repair, tzedakah, just and charitable giving, Gemilut Chasadim, acts of loving kindness, and B'Tselem Elohim, in God's image. And I included a quote, B'Tselem Elohim, I was taught, means we are all at all times in the act of creating the image of God. And if I'm hurting someone, I'm hurting myself and God. And if I'm helping someone, I'm helping myself and God. And we had mitzvah day at my temple, which is something that is very common in especially Jewish American reform settings. And it's usually a day of service that the community participates in together. At my temple, it was a day of packing care packages for children who were going into their first day of foster care. And I could personalize it, and it was really fun and engaging. And I basically learned that I could have fun, I could feel good and help people at the same time. Then I have a cultural and ancestral influence in my service. So my grandma is a Holocaust survivor, and she's still alive, which is such a blessing. And I learned at a very young age through my temple that never again means never again to anyone, anywhere. And so while I was starting to learn about the Holocaust in a really substantial way, I was also learning about the genocide in Darfur, and my temple was a big part of raising money for aid, or we participated in raising money for aid. And so connecting those two things, knowing that my people have had a history of oppression, and now there's people today who are being oppressed, and I can do something about it, all connects to my idea of Tikkun Olam. And for me and many Reform Jews and many not just Reform Jews, of many different sects of Jews, their collective and individual work is a part of what being an active Jew means to them. Okay, what does Tikkun Olam mean literally? So Tikkun means a number of different things. There's a number of different translations: repair, amend, restore, perfect, heal, establish. Many people really want to emphasize that it's not just about improving upon, it is about restoring so that something can operate as it originally was meant to. And then Olam means world or all space and time, depending on if you're talking about ancient Hebrew or modern Hebrew, and a lot of people define it as both. So some examples are Adon Olam means creator or sovereign of the universe, and Leolam means for forever or for eternity. So it's a signature theme of Judaism in my opinion and the opinion of a lot of people I know, but surely not everyone. And it has come to be synonymous with the notion of social action and the pursuit of social justice, or Jewish social justice. It has different meanings and applications throughout history, and also in different areas of Judaism. Judaism has a lot of pluralism. I'm only skimming the surface here with all of those. Every word, every letter, or many words and letters have different meanings. And the Talmud, which is a collection of rabbinic teachings, all has a bunch of sometimes completely contrasting opinions about interpretations of the Torah. So, you know, there's a lot you could say, and I'm going to do my best to try to show you as much as I can. So the phrase Tikkun Olam is not in the Bible or the Old Testament. It is thought to have originated in the 2nd century CE. And I'm going to go over the 4 predominant interpretations. Okay, so the 4 major definitions. In the Eleni prayer, Tikkun Olam is spoken of in the context of the anticipation we feel for the divine kingdom. And it also speaks to our hope for a better future soon to come. The phrase L'taken Olam b'malchut Shaddai means to establish or fix the world under the kingdom of God. This prayer is said at the conclusion of all 3 daily prayers for those who do the 3 daily prayers. And it's basically a promise that the divine sovereignty will eventually encompass the entire world. To put it in context, before it talks about this promise, it talks about idolatry being swept away. And after it talks about this promise, it speaks of a time when all people of the world will call out God's name. Most modern Jews, or many modern Jews, do not associate Tikkun Olam with requiring others to worship God. The biblical inspiration for this actually doesn't involve idolatry and it being wiped out at all. It's a lot more universalistic. And I'll read that real quick. It's a promise that God will bring, and it's Isaiah 56:7. It's a promise that God will bring the other nations to my holy mountain and make them joyful in my house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and their sacrifices shall be acceptable upon my altar, for my house shall be called a house of prayer for all peoples. So due to the Elenu kind of having, is perceived by some to have an intolerant tone when it comes to the wiping away of idolatry and false gods, as it is said. Many Jewish communities today don't say the Eleni prayer out loud, or they've reworked the translation so that it is more universal and more open. And it is basically defined as a manifestation of divinity in every corner of the world and the establishment of godly qualities throughout the world. I perceive this as the achievement of Tikkun Olam will necessitate impurities such as poverty and discrimination that block the manifestation of divine presence being eradicated. Next, the Midrash. Okay, I'm gonna breathe because I'm very nervous and I'm tripping a little bit. The Midrash literally means textual, the word literally means textual interpretation or study. And it is a collection of critical explanations by ancient Jewish leaders. It focuses on the hidden deeper meaning of Torah. So the words between the lines, or the different meanings of words, or what could this mean? And it's very, very interesting. The Midrash, its talk of Tikkun Olam, is specifically about the preservation of the physical world. So one of the Midrash, Reshit Rabbah, which is a collection of midrashim on Genesis from the 5th century, talks about how it says in Genesis, it was good at the end of the second day. Every single day, except for the second day, it talks about creation, and then it says, and it was good. And it doesn't say it on the second day, and the rabbis thought, well, there must have been something created on that day that wasn't good then, or there's something going on there. So that portion is, and God made the expanse, and it separated the water that was below and the expanse from the water that was above the expanse, and it was so. God called the expanse sky, and there was evening, and there was morning, a second day. So the rabbis thought that this implied a division was created, Tikkun Olam, to fix the world and stabilize it, specifically to fix it. So there was something for that it's meant to be, that we are a part of repairing the world. But from what we know of the use of Tikkun Olam in other midrash, it is very specific to the physical world. The Mishnah is the next one I'm covering, which is a body of classical rabbinic teachings compiled in the 3rd century. It is the first major written collection of Jewish oral traditions, and it's known as the Oral Torah. So in the Mishnah, Tikkun Olam is talked about as social order and policy, and it is thought by many to be a way that the rabbis were safeguarding those who were at a disadvantage in their communities. So it's used most predominantly when talking about divorce laws or gets, divorce agreements, and also when talking about loan requirement for Shemitah. And Shemitah is, in Jewish tradition, every 7 years, there was a year when all debts were forgiven. And a lot of other things happen. It's really cool and radical. I wish I could talk more about it. But basically, it says that you have to loan to people the year before the Shemitah, because obviously there's not a great incentive to lend money to people when you know that they're going to be forgiven the next year. But in order to keep the system going, they required that Jewish lenders still lend the year before Shemitah. So as the rabbis tell it, these alterations to Jewish law were made mipnei tikkun ha'olam, for the sake of the repair of the world. So they're intended to forbid what threatens the system as a whole. And it's important to note that these changes in the law very specifically addressed people in the community who were at a disadvantage for some reason. So for instance, when it comes to divorce law, the consequences of having a child born of an adulterous affair were very intense for both the child and the mother. And the rabbis perceived that sometimes men would be wishy-washy about whether or not they wanted a divorce, and it put the woman and the child in a very delicate position. And so they changed the laws in ways that protected those individuals. As well, the law about the Shemitah, many of the people who were helped the most by the ability to get loans and also be forgiven for loans in the Shemitah were people who were experiencing poverty in the community. So ensuring that they could still get loans even the year before the Shemitah was important for those individuals. Lastly, I'm going to talk about the Lurianic Kabbalah, or most of it is called the Kabbalah. It's 16th century, circa 16th century, and it's rooted in the spiritual. And basically at the core of it, it is this idea that all human actions can have an effect on the cosmos. So the creation story in Kabbalah is very beautiful and long and complicated. I am kind of feeling I'm going to butcher it with this shortening, but I'm going to go for it anyway. So basically, God contracted the divine self to make room for creation. And divine light became contained in vessels, also known as kelim. Some returned to the divine source. Some of this light shattered and scattered, and some attached to shards. So these shards are the basis for the material world and are thought to constitute evil. And their trapped sparks of light give them power. They talk about it like almost like a shell that you have to peel away. And I don't know if I mentioned, these teachings are all based on Kabbalah is all about the teachings of Rabbi Isaac Luria, who is the basis for all of this theology. So Adam was intended to restore divine sparks through mystic exercises, but the sin in the Garden of Eden interfered with that. So the responsibility was passed on to later generations. The result of Adam not restoring these divine sparks in the Garden of Eden is that good and evil remain thoroughly mixed in the created world. And human souls previously contained in atoms also became imprisoned in the shards. So according to Rabbi Isaac Luria, in order for the balance between good and evil intended by God to be restored, humans must be involved in the world's repair. Humans are responsible for repairing the holy world from the material world. We are not passive. God cares about our work, and that is the thought process there. And this is achieved by contemplative actions, including liturgical prayer, performance of other mitzvot, which are commandments, and tzedakah, acts of justice, righteousness. There's also some beautiful stuff about in Kabbalah about how you eat your food, how you why we say the prayers before we eat our food, so that we know we are conscious of the nutrients we are processing. There is a lot of focus on these small things in life that we don't think of as being divine, that it's all divine, and it's just up to us to basically unleash it and find out, find the divine and believe in it. So I think that's really beautiful. And next one, this was the longest slide, I promise. Real quick, because you're only getting one perspective today, I'm going to show you a quick video that's a totally different perspective. Rabbi Arthur Green is a expert in mysticism and in Neo-Hasidism. So
exiled from its land since the destruction of the temple by the Romans.
Oops.
The Jewish people before that the temple had been destroyed by the Babylonians. Destruction of the temple by the Romans.
I don't know what's happening. There we go.
Consciousness of exile.
Oh no.
Became a very deep part of the Jewish mentality. The Jewish people, as we are exiled from its land, will be redestruction.
Might not be able to show you this video, unfortunately. Let me try this. Can you guys see what I'm doing here? No? Cool. Sorry, y'all. This is the first time.
The Jewish people has been exiled from its land since the destruction.
Yeah, I'm just going to show it to you.
Of the temple by the Romans. Before that, the temple had been destroyed by the Babylonians, and that consciousness of exile became a very deep part of the Jewish mentality. We are in exile, but one day we will be restored. That sense of exile, you can say, goes back even farther than the first destruction of the temple. It goes back to the story of the expulsion from the Garden of Eden itself. Once we left Eden, all humanity, you may say, is in exile. We live in an exilic world. And and we long to be restored to the original home, to the original Eden in which human beings were created. That sense of exile and redemption, long exile, longing for redemption, has very much been a part of the Jewish religious mentality for thousands of years. Tikkun Olam means working to bring about the end of that exile, means repairing the world, bringing the sparks of life back, discovering the goodness of God wherever it's scattered. How do we do that? We do that by living with other people. We do that by doing acts of goodness, acts of human kindness. Every time you do good, you are raising up some of that light, making the world a better place, bringing the presence of God into greater.
All right. Sorry, y'all. The end is so beautiful. I really hope, you know what? In about 2 seconds, I'm just gonna.
Clarity in your life.
He basically goes into that because of the cultural underpinnings and religious underpinnings, even Jews who are not
around you,
in the potter, even Jews who are not particularly religiously engaged many of them still have a focus on justice. It is still kind of intrinsic to the Jewish life at large that we participate in social justice and action in whatever way that every individual thinks that is done. But yes, that's on YouTube, by the way, if you're interested in seeing the end. But I do want to continue because I want to be respectful of your time. So, Tikkun Olam and homelessness. Jewish law, halakha, attempts to guarantee housing stability. Halakha helps to assure individual members of a community a stable place to live. And when this was written, it most probably applied to Jewish people, but for a number of reasons, in modern times, many Jewish communities have expanded this to mean the communities we live in or the world at large. So providing housing is a form of tzedakah. That is a big thing. I'm gonna switch back to this. Oh my gosh. Can you guys see the screen now, or is it still?
I can see it now.
Awesome. Okay, I had this cut down to 30 minutes and my nerves got the best of me, but I'm really glad you guys are hanging in there with me, and feel free to dip out if you need to. I won't be offended if that needs to happen. I totally understand. Okay. I don't know what's playing. You're getting a little preview of what's to come. All right, here we go. And you can see it full screen, yeah? Awesome, perfect. So so providing housing is a form of tzedakah. The Jewish text identifies the primary need of a person experiencing poverty as certain Jewish texts primarily as the as related to housing. However, most rabbinic and medieval scripture, tzedakah focuses on providing food for those in poverty. So this may reflect that when these laws were written or when these rabbis were writing, food was expensive, but housing was affordable. In one of the Mishnah, I thought it was really interesting, a person experiencing poverty should not be required to sell their home before qualifying for tzedakah. I just thought that was an interesting dynamic. In Isaiah in Haftarah, which is an excerpt from one of the Book of Prophets that we read after Torah on Yom Kippur, which is one of our high holy days, it says, "Take the poor into your homes." And it defines relief of homelessness as a religious duty on par with fasts and other ritual observances. On Sukkot, which is a week-long holiday that we spend in tents or huts called sukkahs, we basically reflect how in the Torah we read about people who live in tents and then houses, and then eventually we read about Sukkot, this holiday of booths or tents, and the sukkah is required to be built so that it's deliberately fragile and exposes us to the possibility of rain and wind, so that generations know that, this is a quote, "So that generations know that I made the children of Israel dwell in Sukkot when I brought them out of the land of Mitzrayim," which is Leviticus 23:44. Sukkot basically reenacts the ancestral experience of being refugees experiencing homelessness. At the same time, Sukkot is a harvest holiday where we are told to bring offerings and cultivate gratitude. And there's a lot of writings that also say that it is a requirement to invite the widow, the orphan, and the stranger into your tent and to accommodate people in your community, even though we are meant to be living in these fragile structures. So here you go. The Bible also commands that a poor person be granted sufficient for what lacks, according to what is lacking to him. One Talmudic text understands each phrase in that command as referring to a specific type of assistance one might grant a person experiencing poverty. Sufficient for what he lacks is a house, and what is lacking, this is a bed and a table. So this is the significant text that says that the primary need of a person experiencing poverty is related to housing, in contrast to many rabbinic and medieval scriptures. All right, why am I here at the Night Ministry? Besides that it's an awesome, wonderful organization. I am part of a program that is part of an organization called Repair the World. It was founded in 2009 with the mission of making volunteering a defining element of American Jewish life. That is the devotion of this organization. And it mobilizes tens of thousands of young Jews to volunteer in tackling pressing local needs each year and equips communities and partners to do the same. It is rooted in Jewish values, learning, and history. How does Repair hope to achieve this mission? Well, Repair provides meaningful volunteer experiences that address real needs in partnership with local communities and enables young people to find Jewish content in their pursuit of justice and social change. Volunteers experience the power of community and set about building it for themselves. Repair the World is a immersive Jewish service learning experience, which means it weaves full-time service with learning and reflection. Mine is not full-time, but they also have programs that are full-time and are also longer than my service, so up to a year long or more, I believe, for some programs. Volunteers learn about the context in which they are serving, and explore Jewish content that speaks to and deepens service experience. And this, for me personally, has been very rewarding and life-changing to learn so deeply about a lot of these issues that are involved in the service that everyone is doing, and then have it tied back to my Judaism has just been a really wonderful experience for me.
Entered a new phase because of how quickly this virus is spreading.
Half a mile
phase
of
because of how
sidewalk,
quickly this
people
virus is
after a
spreading.
lifetime of work and responsibility, suddenly have nothing after a lifetime of work.
Sorry, I don't know why it's doing that. Is it echoing for you guys too? Okay.
Yeah, it sounds like it's somehow playing twice.
Yeah, I don't know why. It's odd, but we'll just do this.
We've entered a new phase because of how quickly this virus is spreading.
Half a mile of sidewalk packed with people who, after a lifetime of work and responsibility, suddenly have nothing.
Now, more than ever, we must be guided by the Jewish value of caring for our neighbors.
I was raised to believe that it was our responsibility to give something back to a city that had been good to us.
We dedicate and commit ourselves to ongoing work, dismantling systems of racism and oppression and discrimination everywhere.
As one singular person, you can't do everything in the world, so you have to actually take care of the immediate needs right in my community.
I value the sense of togetherness that comes from all working together to solve a common problem.
I really do think that without this opportunity, I would feel without a paddle when it comes to figuring out how to help.
It is one way of using the privilege and power I have and sharing that with others.
Awesome. So Serve the Moment is a specific program that Repair the World had created in response to the pandemic that is mobilizing people with nonprofits in their local communities, which is how I came to be at the night ministry. Real quick, I'm going to read a quote from the interim chief executive officer and president, Cindy Greenberg. And this, I should know this, but Cindy Greenberg is the current interim chief, I believe. Here we go. Repair the world. Tikkun Olam is central to our work, our mission, our name. It's what motivates us as an organization every day. How can we continue repairing the world? What does it mean for us to do so? How can we care for the most vulnerable people in our society? At Repair, we do this through service alongside those most impacted by the issues we're trying to address. Repair the World was founded on the belief that service is the central message of our Jewish tradition. Showing up for one another is key to leaving the world a better place than how we found it. Tikkun Olam is an urgent call to make a positive impact. At Repair the World, we mobilize people to take action at the local level with trusted community partners so that service is thoughtful, authentic, and a vehicle for building relationships between communities and people who might otherwise never interact with each other. Service is about taking action, and when done well, it's also an opportunity for learning about systemic issues that cause the service to be needed in the first place. Meaningful service has the potential to transform our communities and also to transform ourselves. That was Cindy Greenberg. All right, we have come to the end. I just want to thank you all for being here. One thing I wanted to add before we finish is speak a little bit about Tikkun Olam and anti-Semitism. Some of you may know there was a really horrible shooting that occurred at a synagogue called Tree of Life in Pittsburgh. And the shooter in his manifesto specifically spoke about how Tree of Life's work with HIAS, which is an organization that helps refugees come into the country and settle here, was what enraged him so much that he ended up doing what he did. So, and that work with HIAS was specifically part of Tree of Life's Tikkun Olam initiative. So it was really impactful for me to find out that that wasn't alone just about hatred for Jews, but hatred for the other in general, and hatred for Jews who participate in trying to aid the other from coming into our country and becoming, not the other, becoming an American, like they deserve to be. All right, real quick, so I have here, I spelled Hannah's name wrong. It's with an S, but I just wanted to show my sources real quick and shout out to Hannah for being a big inspiration. And now here's some cool quotes you could read if you'd like to. And if you have any questions, or if you've reflected on the questions from the beginning and you'd like to say something about it, or if you want to like make any comments, corrections to anything I said in this, feel free. This is an open space. So yeah.
Thanks so much, Annie. This was great. I know I learned a lot. I'm curious, Annie, if there was anything that really surprised you in your research. Like I said in the beginning, I know you did a lot of work on this, and I know that you already knew a lot about Tikkun Olam, but I'm wondering what surprised you in your own research on this topic.
So I grew up with it being basically Jewish social justice, and that was the thing, and learning about all the different Jewish communities and their different approach to Tikkun Olam. Everywhere I turned, there was something that kind of blew my mind. I didn't have time to really talk about Chabad, but what they have to say about Tikkun Olam is really interesting. It has to do with every single act we do being a part of Tikkun Olam, and that everyone's is individually different, because each shard of light, kind of tying in the Kabbalah concept, is different, and everyone's relationship with God is different. So how we participate in Tikkun Olam is inherently different. It's just given me a lot more openness to pluralism, and also grounded me in a belief that Tikkun Olam has always been, to an extent, about social justice, proto-social justice, because we didn't talk, they didn't have that term back then, but it did have this concept of fairness and egalitarianism. I learned a lot about Hebrew words that convey basically kind of like almost like a karmic concept of and almost like socialism of things rolling, or I should say egalitarianism, poverty being this thing that, if you give to someone and then you're needy, it will come back to you because you gave in the first place, even if that was hard. And that's something we have to cope with when we think about like self-care as well. But I think that's really beautiful. I'm trying to think of anything else. Oh, there's a lot of opposition in the community, my own community, the Jewish community, to the social justice idea of Tikkun Olam. I didn't include it here, but there was a really interesting piece about controversy, and a writer who wrote a book that kind of went after some of the leaders, many of them rabbis, of these social justice organizations, and basically said they made Tikkun Olam, like equated it to the Democratic Party. And in this article, a lot of these rabbis had some really amazing responses that included textual evidence of it always being about that, and that it is not necessarily just something that the modern Jews or secular Jews use to promote progressive values. It is in the text.
Thanks so much. I think that's really relatable for those of us who are not in the Jewish tradition. Sometimes within our own traditions, we come up against very similar types of difference of idea. Anyone else have any questions or reflections for Annie?
Sure, Annie, this was awesome. Thank you so much for presenting. I really enjoyed it and learned a lot. I'm interested in the organization Repair the World. Is that across the United States or is that a regional program?
Could you repeat that one more time? I didn't hear the last part of your sentence.
Oh, sure. I was interested in learning more about Repair the World. Is that a national organization or is that something regional to Chicago?
It's national. So there's, I don't think it's in every state, but it is in many cities. And when we do these learnings, there's local learnings, and then there's also learnings on the national level. So I'm getting to take these classes with Jewish people in Detroit and in Los Angeles and in Baltimore. And that's been really wonderful. And yeah.
Thank you.
I don't have a question, but I'll just add, Annie, that as someone who is Jewish and has worked in the social justice space for a while, I'm like so blown away by how much you just taught me and how much you know. And it's been so, so great and cool to learn from you and alongside you. So I'm just like, wow, that was so awesome. Thank you for leading us through that.
Thank you so much, Melissa. That means a lot. That means, thank you.
And then Annie, do you know what kind of work you're going to be doing with the night ministry?
So I've been working with the night ministry for a while now. I'm nearing the end of my service term for Serve the Moment. And I'm doing, this presentation was a part of my work, but also I do a lot of donation organizing, which I really love because I know now exactly what is in a storage room for a organization that does what the night ministry does, like what is needed, and what runs low and what is there a lot of. And it's information that I can take when I'm then donating later in life or with people. I can tell people I know so that they know what is important to donate. And it also kind of speaks to this, something that was in a lot of the text I read was about there's no work in this field that is looked down upon, that you're above, basically. And it's, been super rewarding to just move physical things around in a way that I don't think I would have even known before this. But I think it speaks to this idea that if you know where your work is going to, if you have faith in the organization you're working with, yeah, everything counts. Everything counts. Someone has to organize these, and I'm not, I am by no means above that work at all. So I really enjoyed myself.
Yeah, and it may seem kind of minimal at times, but it's been so helpful to have you organizing the things, especially as we're moving into our holiday celebration and trying to get things prepared, both for all of our young people in shelters and all of our folks we're serving out on the street. So it's been super helpful to have Annie helping us prepare for that. And we also typically have lots of groups of volunteers that come in and do the work. And we're not really doing that right now, right? Because of the pandemic. So Annie's been serving as like 5 different groups all by herself.
Thank you for that, Brittany. I appreciate that.
Annie, I really enjoyed your presentation, and I was reflecting on the questions you posed to us, and I was just kind of wondering, like, I think you said something along the lines of like, some Jewish people see their responsibility to community as like just the Jewish community. Some expand it a bit, and some see it as like the world? And like, do you see that as being a barrier to like spreading this message of like Judaism is service?
Yes, if I mean, you're asking for, at this point, my personal opinion, which I wasn't as forward about giving because I wanted to make it clear that they were different. But in your question, you know, obviously like completely caught that. So my opinion is yes, it is a barrier. Something I had to cut from my presentation for time is organizations that I really respect, including two names are Jewish Voice for Peace and If Not Now. And they are very controversial in the Jewish community because it is all kind of, you know, Tikkun Olam was applied to the creation of Israel, and it's also applied to advocacy for Palestinians and for aid and for a reevaluation of the treatment of Palestinians in that area. And it comes. I've been to Israel twice, and I've talked to Jewish people in Israel about this, Israelis, and it comes down to this very like, well, what do you do? Like, it's, you know, it's who do you help first? Because there is a lot of text that it says, you know, if there's someone hungry in your community, you help someone hungry in your community before you help someone outside of your community. And if there's, you know, you give to your brother before you give to if he's needy, before you give to a stranger. And in the Talmud, not necessarily the Bible. And then there's a Talmud text that goes against that. Like I said, it's hard because these rabbis really weren't afraid of combating each other. And they, you know, there's a joke that's like, you ask a question to a Jewish person or to a rabbi, you're going to get 3 more questions. You're not going to get an answer. So I have come up against, it's so interesting that you asked that, because that's something that's a big part of my life, is kind of trying to respect Jewish pluralism and love it and honor it, and also feeling that sometimes it gets in the way of my own service that I want to do that involves outreach to people outside the Jewish community. It definitely is something that I think about a lot, and that I'm still working through.
Yeah, thank you. That was a really thoughtful answer. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing from like my tradition, being that like Christian ministry often focuses on like helping Christians, and it's just hard to push back against like, wow, I really think there's a lot in scripture that goes against that.
We had a really amazing discussion yesterday with 2 individuals from a organization or a group called Glide, but I cannot remember their names right now, unfortunately.
Michael and Isoke.
There we go, Michael and Isoke, and from Glide, which is based in San Francisco, and they spoke about providing clean needles to people, which is really controversial. Like in some settings, that's like not okay. But I was thinking about it a lot, and it's, if that person's going to do that anyway, and you're helping them more by providing than not providing, then if the laws are intended to help people, but using this law against people won't help them, it'll hurt them, then it's kind of, the law is not really doing what it's supposed to be doing in that context. It's not helping people, and it's important for me to have inspirations like that who say that the people come first. There's another Talmudic story about requirement that it is not you who decides how much work you've done for someone and what you should get back. It's something like if the person dreams, if in their dreams they communicate to God somehow that they are satisfied, then you have done it. But it's up to the person who you're serving to feel that they have been helped. You don't get to set that line. And I thought that was really important and beautiful. And thank you for your questions and for sharing as well. I really appreciate that. I really love interfaith connections, so I'm appreciative.
So much, Annie. Yeah, we, you're talking about harm reduction, and that is really important to us here at the Night Ministry as well, realizing that first and foremost, you can't help somebody get back on their feet if they're not alive. So we take harm reduction very seriously here. And I think, what you're speaking of is really in line with that, and how we, as people in multiple faith traditions or no faith tradition, have to hold the complexities of what it means to serve others in a society that really isn't built in a way to serve them, right? So I really appreciate the background and the foundation that you've given us to talk about that today. Thank you, Brittany. I also want to comment on the fact that just being invited to talk about Judaism and Jewish values in an organization that I know originally was based or was born out of a religious Christianity. I don't know specific kinds. I don't want to say anything that's not correct, but there's never been any sort of feeling that I am not wanted, or that or that there's any sort of, not that there would be, but I have just felt that our goals are one and the same in this, which is to help people. I think I want to add a little interesting thing that I learned too about Messianic Jews, because they do exist, and they do believe in Tikkun Olam, and I'm generalizing, but there is a belief that the Messiah is coming. There's the Tikkun Olam is a part of that, the speed along, and the achievement of Tikkun Olam is Messianic times. It is the return, and I just thought it was really interesting how there was kind of that segue between it. And when I was looking on YouTube, there's a lot of people who Christian religious teachers who were teaching about Tikkun Olam, and how people who follow Jesus, Tikkun Olam can be a value too. And it's in Chabad, it's this thing of it's not just Jews who impact the cosmos, it's everyone. It is everyone. Everyone is making a difference. And I think I took this out, but I think there's sometimes a misconception, or not, because there's different opinions about it, but of this idea of chosen people. And I was taught growing up that chosen means we're not, God's favorite. We know there's no favorites. God has no favorites, and so we're chosen to do the work for everyone, and with everyone, for the betterment of humanity as a whole. And I lost my train of thought a little bit right there, but yeah. For the I'm not sure where it went. What was I just speaking about? I think that's a great place to close up. I do appreciate those thoughts, Annie, about how I say a lot in all the spaces I work that it takes all of us, and we need all of us. So I really appreciate that. I think that's a great thought to end on. And yeah, just thank you so much, Annie. We really appreciate everything you've shared, how you made it personal, how much of yourself you shared with us. And I think we all learned a tremendous amount. So thank you so much. And we hope that we can continue to have spaces like this every month where we can learn and get to know each other. So everyone take care, have a beautiful weekend. And Annie, I'll let you close us out.
Well, awesome. Thank you guys so much for coming. Thank you for sitting through my first Canva presentation and all your amazing questions and for sharing. I'm just really, really appreciative to share this all with you, share all this with you all. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Be well.